Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're glad you joined us again for this week's Backstage meeting, this so-called episode of Right Angle that is available to members only. This is a way that most business organizations are trying to monetize their content. This is actually kind of like a negative monetization of content. We only show it to people who have already paid for the other content and are paying for many other people to do content. And we do that because we love you and because you've always been gentle with us in the past. And so we expect... Yes.
Can I add that we have an awful lot of new members, almost double what we had beginning in November.
Wow.
And for those of you who may be watching for the first time, I would just like to say very sincerely, no refunds.
And Bill, by the way, should be noted for having used the word awful in the original sense. It's not like he said, an awful lot of new members. That was awful used to mean something that inspires awe. Her Majesty was awful. So that was...
This show is awful in the non-traditional sense.
In the contemporary idiomatic speech?
The contemporary slang
There's a
usage.
homonym for awful that we could probably get into.
By the way, I just I have these little wireless earbuds that I use to be able to hear Bill and Steve as we do this show. And for the first time in my life today, I went into the bank to be fleeced. And while I was filling out the fleecing form, an earbud fell out of my ear. This is the first time this has ever happened. Like, I've never had any kind of earbud fall out of my ear before, certainly not in a public place. And it just fell out of my ear, bounced on the table, and hit the floor. As I bent over to pick up the earbud, the other earbud fell out of my ear and bounced on the floor.
I thought you were going to say your pants ripped.
And that's how you got to be homecoming king.
That's right. So, however, it must be said that the Raycon earbuds bounce well. Raycon, not a sponsor of BillWhittle.com.
Yeah,
Not
they should
yet.
be.
But the sound is great, though. And
Good.
I mean the sound of them bouncing off the floor. So this week we have Steve. First of all, Bill's going to host one of our episodes this week. Steve is going to host two of our episodes this week. And I'm just not going to do anything because as we're just going to...
You can't do nothing.
We're going to count what I'm saying now as if I had hosted an episode. Because, and maybe this is the topic, and as much as I'm loath to discuss it, I feel like there is no place in America today where it's okay for me to express what I really think about the recent goings on in America today. The people on the left don't want to hear it. The people on the right don't want to hear it. Trump opponents don't want to hear it. Trump supporters don't want to hear it. There is literally, I have now carved my niche down to a niche of one. I'm the only person who wants to hear what I have to say, and even I am not so sure that I really want to hear it out. And I think I may not be alone. I mean, every once in a while, somebody lets on in a public place or in a communication that they feel like there are more topics than ever that are not appropriate for public discourse because you don't want to set anybody off. And it's not, the typical thing for a guy on the right to do, like a guy like me would be to say, well, it's those damned liberal, progressive, whoever they are, is trying to shut us down. It's not just that. It's like you can't, I would rather have a friendly conversation with somebody than to set off to light the fuse of something that I know is going to cause a terrible conflict with somebody. And if you don't come down strongly in one camp or the other, you don't have a place where you can actually have a decent conversation. And
can I give you
I think you have to do it.
Oh, sorry, Bill, go ahead.
What's that,
I think that's exactly what you should talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it's a great topic.
Scott,
let me give you a counterexample. I had a very pleasant surprise last week. On Wednesday's Insanity Wrap, which is my morning column for PJ Media, my other day job.
PJ Media, also not a sponsor of BillWhittle.com. Go ahead.
Also not a sponsor. I I wrote a miniature piece inside the piece because it's a news wrap, all the most absurd stories of the day, in which I tried to fairly critique President Trump for his incoherent election fraud strategy dating back to about November 4th that morning. He'd been talking about this all summer, and yet the next day when it happened, or at least he thought it had happened, depending on where you go, he had no strategy. There was nothing in place. They were throwing Hail Mary pass after Hail Mary pass, overpromising, under-delivering, just pretty much performing about as badly as one could do in that circumstance. Just not good. In fact, I said anybody who thinks his strategy's been coherent since November drinks stronger stuff than I do, and that's really saying something. And I was braced. I had braced myself. I braced this chair with extra metal struts for the backlash I was going to get in the comment section from readers over at PJ. And you know what? Every single one of them was mature and understanding and all the rest. So I don't know if we'll actually talk about that on your segment.
Do you have some sort of an AI bot that weeds out like 90% of your comments or something?
No, I get into the comments over there and get rid of the bots myself.
I think you should do it.
We've got some trolls.
And this is actually, not only is it a lousy topic, but it's the worst possible time to do it because we just, on Sunday, launched a new discussion forum at billwhittle.com, which our members are enjoying. And if you're not a member yet, now's the time to get in there to see the thrashing I'm about to take.
I don't see I don't see how that position, whatever that position is going to cause thrashing in the MB2A forum. That whole forum is about moving to a different level.
Well, and actually, there are two things there, Bill, though, because the way it's set up, there's a whole section for the MB2A stuff, but there's also like a general forum where other issues can be discussed. But the prime motivation of it was because people were saying, hey, we need a place to talk about the Moving Back to America stuff. Yeah,
well, I think that whole strategy is it's just a forward-looking strategy at this point. And I think, look, if you want to do it, if you want to save it till next week, but anytime you want to do it, if you think it's appropriate now, then do it now.
Well, whatever you want to do. Because of the timeliness of people's concern about what I think we can easily bump this to the Monday release of next week's. It's not okay. It's not like no. I mean, we can record it today, but it's not. It's not like it's breaking news.
Yeah, but sit on it until Monday.
Yeah, Wednesday we record these.
We always have a last segment every week.
And we record these on Tuesday morning, and as we record this, it's Tuesday the 19th. Tomorrow, Joe Biden takes the virtual walk, and so let's just hang on to it till Monday. But if you want, even if we wanted to run it tomorrow, I'd still do it. That's the entire point of being here. Is that so we gotta support different opinions, and if we don't do that, then we're no better than Steve Crowder.
If I'm with people on the left, and I suggest that Donald Trump accomplished anything during the last 4 years that's of value to this country, then of course I'm anathema. If I'm with people on the right, I shouldn't even say the right. It's not technically the right. If I'm with people who are big supporters of President Trump's, he brought a whole bunch of people in who I don't think ideologically identified themselves before Trump as much as they do now. They identified themselves more with his personality, his approach to doing things. But if I suggest to them that I think that, like Steve suggested, not only did he in advance spend a great deal of time talking about how the election was going to be stolen, and at the same time depressed his write-in vote because he said that anybody who was writing in, or not write-in, what do they call that, mail-in vote?
Mail-in.
Yeah, depressed the mail-in vote by suggesting to people that it was some corrupt way of doing business, and meanwhile it's still legal. And so the Democrats did it like crazy. The Republicans didn't do it as much. And then after the fact, with, again, no clear strategy for how he was going to establish that any kind of corruption happened that would have thrown the vote in any of the key precincts or states, he lost the election. He primed people for him losing the election. And then afterward, he's refused to acknowledge his losing the election. And in my opinion, it keeps the Republican Party and, frankly, President Trump himself from accurately reflecting upon what might have been done differently to actually win the election. And why this really bothers me is because the whole conservative movement gets tied every 4 years or 8 years to a particular individual, and that guy's approach has so much sway, and people are in Congress, they're continuing. I mean, just today, Mitch McConnell said that he thought that President Trump was lying about the election corruption, and that that helped to gin up the mob that attacked the Capitol. Okay, so that's what date is this? This is like the 19th, 18th or 19th. Now, whether you agree with him or not, clearly this isn't something he just thought up today. And my thought on that is that Mitch McConnell himself, the guy who was and is still at this moment the Senate Majority Leader, was afraid to say what he actually thought in public, because you can't say to Republican voters what you really believe about President Trump. You can't say, great job on Israel, great job on cutting regulation, great job on cutting taxes, great job on appointing conservative judges that Mitch helped to get through the courts, but you lost the election. Once you say you lost the election, then all that other great job stuff is out the window, and you're a cuck, and you're a traitor, and you're a sellout, and why don't you just go and hang out with Kamala?
Well, that's a curse if I've ever heard one.
Go hang out with Kamala?
Kamala. Yeah.
She looked really fun with Jane Pauley, don't you think? Did you see the Jane Pauley interview?
Oh, I am so tired of puff pieces already.
Jane Pauley was very, very interested in how they first met, and the fact that apparently Kamala Harris's husband, whose name I think is Doug something, what he would be called in office when she was in office, and the first text message that he sent after their first date that he composed with his friend while at a basketball game. That was like the big thrust of this interview, or at least the parts I saw of it. But it's Jane Pauley. So.
Hard-hitting journalism.
Anyway, so this is my attempt to get myself fired.
The media spent the last 4 years pretending like everything was the end of the world, and now they're going to spend the next 4 years pretending that absolutely nothing is going wrong. I think you can say
remarkable. That, and you can also say some of the things that I said with equal integrity. And I don't buy a lot of the argument that I get from people who is kind of well, the other side did something like this, so why can't we do something? Like the argument from the moral authority to do something is based on what situational ethicists on the other side do, so therefore anything that we do is permissible because of anything they did. And there used to be a Republican Party that would not abide arguments like that. And of course, somebody's now saying, and that's why
I didn't hear what the Republicans want
to buy. It's a Republican Party that lost a series of elections.
Right there. That's what I was just going to say. There's somebody who's about to say it's because that attitude lost them elections. And I may be the last guy on earth, but I'd rather lose an election doing the right thing than sell out to the techniques of the most corrupt and venal sorts of craven politicians in order to get my guy, who's not even my guy, into office. And I voted for the guy.
No, that's definitely one way to look at it.
Anyway, that's it. That's all. Because I really don't have a topic. And the reason I'm doing this topic is because unless I talk about this, there's nothing to talk about.
If I can make a suggestion,
sure.
Because this is something we've been talking about behind the scenes over at that other place. This should probably be the last time to rehash the election. We've got that's 2 month, almost 3 month old news now. I know it's been generating fresh headlines this entire time, as it had to for various reasons. But after Wednesday, we've got a brand new administration bringing in all kinds of crazies into all kinds of levels of government, and we have got a lot more stuff to talk about than who lost what back in November.
And I agree with that. And for this last time, though, I think we have to acknowledge that anybody on the right or is a constitutional conservative who believed that Trump actually lost the election and that there was no substantial corruption that caused the election to be lost is anathema in the official Trump party right now. And I'm calling it the Trump party because at some point it'll morph back into the Republican Party that won't be so firmly attached to his personality. But right now, that opinion is not allowed to be discussed. Try to find a conservative place where people are actually saying and being considered, where they're saying, you know what, he should have acknowledged early on that he lost the election. He should have conceded the election. He should have either put up or shut up when it came to his court cases, and he didn't. And so, he's done everything and beyond everything anybody could ever imagine to make a public case in the courts and in public relations for something that didn't happen. And yet still, it's considered lunacy for me to say this.
Trump had a fine line to walk post-election. On the one hand, lots of evidence of fraud. On the other hand, it might not be what lost in the election. It might have been the turnout machine in the big cities that Mark Zuckerberg funded in DeKalb County to the tune of $10 million, which effectively doubled their election budget there. That said, Trump had to keep up the fight in order not to alienate the same people who put him in the White House 4 years ago. On the other hand, once he lost at the Supreme Court, it was time to throw up his hands and say, look, I tried everything I could, but if the Supreme Court won't hear it, my hands are tied, and it's Joe Biden's election. And you can phrase that in a way that says, I'm going to continue the fight tomorrow. But by dragging it out past the point of pointlessness the way he did, I think he's done, essentially, as a political figure, and there's no coming back from this. The thing to do would have been, after SCOTUS denied the case, would be to concede gracefully. Next summer, say, after a cooling off period, put together a new team, a younger team. I love Rudy Giuliani, but he's clearly lost a few steps in the last few years. Put together a new team, figure out what went wrong, whether it was legal or fraud or anything else, figure out what went wrong and how to combat it in 2024. And I think that chance is over. It's gone.
And that to me is
That's a damn shame.
Serious approach to things. And I think the other thing, this probably the saddest thing of all from the perspective of his presidency, is that he lost an opportunity to be celebrated for the great accomplishments that he did have. For the accomplishments, frankly, that got me to really good ones. The first time around, I didn't vote for him. The second time I did. So this was after everybody was saying what a terrible guy he is, because all I did was say, you know what? He has these accomplishments in areas that I really care about, and I am going to support that. And what he misses, because of the way he conducted himself after the election, is he misses the victory parade. He misses the opportunity to be remembered, for the guy who's bringing peace to the Middle East. I mean, like it was the Gordian knot. Is that the thing that can't be cut, or you kind of whatever? Like it's the insoluble problem. And he's got all these Arab countries who are now coming alongside and saying, you know what, we should have better relationships with Israel, and screw you, Iran.
Somebody sent me the 60-minute piece with the defense, the guy on what happened in the All-State Center, explaining how the whole thing was a giant misconception and how it's all easily explainable and so on. And I got that as part of an email saying, well, maybe it didn't happen at the State Farm Center. And I listened to this is why debate is useful. I listened to the so-called explanation for what actually happened there. And nobody is prepared to rebut the rebuttal, but rebutting the rebuttal was actually, I thought, incredibly simple. There were just any number of things that the 60-minute host just noddingly, well, I see. Well, then you're right. There really was nothing there. No, I disagree. I think there was something there, and I think there's plenty of evidence that there was stuff everywhere. I completely believe that election was stolen outright, just stolen. Absolutely, and I base it on evidence, but that ship has sailed, and that's all there is to it.
And the job of the press should have been to press that question. You're absolutely right. Like they should have come with it's the way I used to prepare for the Bill Whittle Now show. It's like I want to say the things that you already don't agree with to see what kind of answer you have for that. And the reporter should have gone into that with that approach saying, millions of people believe this. What's the answer to this?
Well, just as one example, as they tried to say that, no, this whole thing's just imaginary. The guy, this is on the 60 Minutes piece. The Georgia guy said, well, the order came to shut down the center, but that was a mistake. And so, but you can see here we are putting these sealed ballots into these containers and putting them in and so on. And therefore, there's a reasonable explanation for all of this. And my thumbnail response to this was, number one, who gave the order to shut this center down? No one else shut down. Who gave the order to shut down a center? During the course of the evening, we were told it was due to a burst water main. That's clearly not the case. That was the official explanation on the night of the election. And then the official explanation after the video came out was that no, the center never got shut down. This is what the two Georgia officials said after the video came out. Yeah. The official reply, no, never shut down. It's just the cutters went home and everybody else thought it was shut down. So everybody else went home, but we kept on counting anyway. So if it had been me, I would have said, who made the decision to shut the thing down? Number two, once all the observers are gone and everything was sealed and all this stuff that they said on 60 Minutes, who made the decision to open it back up again and to count votes during the night when there were no observers present? That was never denied by the 60 Minutes things. There's tons of questions in that one particular case. And this is the kind of thing that I find. The guy who made the speech said, well, this video was available all the time, and it's just a tragedy that they didn't reveal it. Well, you've just said that a voting center was shut down. You didn't identify by who, and you didn't identify why. And then it was reopened after these things had been sealed, telling the observers and the press that we're going to recount in the morning. But once they left, you started recounting at night. Who gave that order? And that's not relevant. Nobody cares about that. So I just completely disagree with you. But the point of it is, I think the reason why we should do this episode is we got to be able to talk and disagree about these things. We're not going to put ourselves in a situation where you cannot have a discussion about things. If that's the case, then our entire theory is wrong.
Well, in the case
our
you're
entire
making
theory
there
of everything is wrong.
You're reinforcing my point of there is no dialogue about anything. And by dialogue, I don't mean kissy, kissy, kumbaya. We're all going to hug and embrace and I'm going to cave in because I don't want to offend you. There's no actual, and I don't just mean debate. I don't mean like I'm preparing my case, now you prepare your case. I mean that people talking with each other in an attempt to understand. And there's not a lot of that. There's a lot of, I already know what the truth is, and I'm here to blow it out of my mouth hole until you cave in. But there's not a lot of people going, let me listen to your mouth hole for a little while and see if there's anything about what you're saying that I haven't considered. And so that interview, or any interview in the press, tends to be, and it makes me sick. I mean, for the sake of research, I read the New York Times, I read the Washington Post, I watch CNN, I listen occasionally to MSNBC, and they are incapable of doing a legitimate interview where they don't throw in snarky little comments, where they actually try to draw out what the source actually thinks and believes, and then challenge them with contrary evidence that is widely believed in a way that would illuminate the subject. And that
I just saw,
drives me nuts.
Yeah, it's about pushing a narrative.
No, I saw the 60 Minutes piece cold. I didn't have any time to prepare for it. I just watched it cold, watched it in one, and then I sat down and wrote 4 or 5 paragraphs about questions that the guy in the rebuttal brings up that were never answered, and for which the 60 Minutes reporter went, oh, okay, well, yes, no, absolutely. There's no adversarial search for the truth on 60 Minutes. They weren't trying to find the truth. They were trying to hear the latest explanation, which, by the way, contradicted the previous official explanation, which contradicted the previous official explanation. Not opinions. That's what we heard from the state of Georgia. And that alone ought to raise some issues. So yes, I think that the entire purpose of doing this episode is to simply say that if we are not prepared to discuss things in an open and rational fashion and present some facts, then we're doomed. And I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let it happen here anyway.
And we have midterm elections to win, like. And I don't mean
we have to win the midterm elections in order to eliminate things like the Dominion voting machines and other things.
Yeah, and maybe that gets people lathered up and they say, well, if we won the midterm elections, frankly, I don't think that there's a problem with the Dominion voting machines, and that's not my issue. But there are other issues that are important. The judicial nominees, obviously important. Make sure getting as you often say, Bill, getting the Constitution back into the package that it was delivered in originally would be great. Those kind of issues. Right now, my concern is that we are not doing the kind of analytical, reflective analysis of what really happened, so that we can learn from it and go forward. And I'm afraid that the midterm elections are going to be some sort of crusade to resurrect Donald Trump. And I think that would be a massive mistake.
The problem with the Dominion voting machines is that 100 million people think they're fraudulent. And that alone is enough to dismiss the Dominion voting machines.
There's no transparency with those voting machines.
That's right.
And an election, if an election process doesn't engender trust, if the process itself does not engender trust in the process, then your election is broken, even if every vote was counted fairly.
Correct. And that's a point I made on an earlier episode. If you go back to the State Farm Arena thing, when the observers are dismissed and told that the place is closed and they continue to count votes without observers, now you've broken the chain of provenance. Now it's no longer evidence. You got DNA evidence from OJ. You've got Goldman's blood in OJ Simpson's SUV. It goes into a bag. The bag goes to the police station. Then it disappears for 3 hours. And when the bag appears again, it's not evidence anymore. Right? Because there's been no chain of custody. When the chain of custody is broken, then that's not evidence anymore. Then there is the ability for somebody to cast reasonable doubt on shenanigans. And that's why O.J. Simpson walked.
And I think that reasonable doubt thing that's what President Trump has made his full-time job, not after the election, before the election. He spent months telling people that it was going to be a corrupt election. And then as soon as the election happened, he said it was a corrupt election because he lost, obviously, because he said, if I lose, before the election, he was saying, if I don't win, you know it's corruption. Ergo, if I do win, you know it was a fair election. And so he kind of set up this false situation where only his victory would prove that the integrity of the American electoral process.
I think what he was really saying is if I win, then we've won by a margin greater than the corruption, because the corruption seems to pretty much be going one way.
Yeah.
You're more subtle than he is.
Well, that's because
you're more nuanced.
So is your average jackhammer.
That's right. Anyway, so we'll see what we can do with that. I frankly loathe discussing it, but I am at an impasse. My other alternative is to look for, wonderful keto cooking recipes that I can do shows about until if we can't talk about the stuff that's primarily in the news, because honestly, I don't want to piss off Bill's audience. I mean, that's not why I'm here. Bill's my friend. And I love the members of this enterprise. And so I'm not going out of my way to tick them off. On the other hand, if I'm not telling you what I really believe about this, then, what kind of commentator am I?
What kind of business is it? What kind of a forum is it? What does it stand for? If it's all echo chamber stuff, I've maintained from the beginning, and I maintain this about the fraud as well, is that overwhelming evidence is overwhelming evidence, and it's whether it's presented correctly or not is the operative issue here. But the reason that I believe that we're on the right side of history is because I believe we're on the right side of history, and that will bear examination. I'm ready to debate any left-winger about whether the conservative principles are better for people than left-wing principles. I don't have to silence people, and I don't have to silence people who are dissenting within the own ranks, because this is how you achieve the truth, is you triangulate it. You triangulate on the truth, and if you can't defend your position, then you shouldn't be defending it, So
pick a new piece of ground.
That's exactly right. And so let's do that.
And as Steve indicated, I long to move on to the substantive issues that face this country.
Well, you're in luck.
Oh, good. What are you doing, Steve?
Defining domestic terrorism down.
I'm making a note of this.
This is, well, I don't know if that's what you want to headline, but that's just what popped into my brain at the moment. The big push after the, actually, no, let me rephrase this. You might think that after weeks and months of, well, let's call it domestic terrorism in cities like Portland and Seattle and Milwaukee, where, black mass thugs took over the streets and closed down businesses and harassed civilians and declared autonomous zones and all the rest, that if you're going to get excited in a legal way about battling domestic terrorism, maybe that would be the impetus. The months of partly violent riots in our progressive cities. But no. There is a one-time riot on Capitol Hill, which may have had BLM and Antifa people involved, and then some Trump people stupid enough to follow along if they weren't indeed the instigators. And now there are huge calls on the incoming Biden administration, and Biden himself used the word insurrectionists to describe the rioters, for a new anti-domestic terrorism bill, probably shaped on the Patriot Act that Joe Biden likes to brag that he was a major author of. What this tells me is, and actually, I'm going to set this up for one of your guys' questions. What this tells me is when you ignore months-long domestic terrorism in your own cities and then jump on a one-time thing, God, I hope it's a one-time thing, in D.C. that involves your political opponents, you're not trying to use the law to shut down domestic terrorists. You want to use the law to shut down your political opposition.
No kidding.
I would...
We're gonna talk about the specifics on this in the segment.
Only because this is going to be a pre-recorded show, I would... be cautious about the use of one time.
Of what?
Of using the phrase one time, since we, right now, 20,000 National Guard troops have swarmed across the nation's capital, and we've essentially created an event with no audience. Well,
that's a bit of a. Well, I'm hoping it's a tangential issue. We'll find out for sure on Wednesday, but if the latest tin pot dictator who won his last election with 98.9% of the vote is getting sworn into office, and he first has to give his soldiers a loyalty test before they can be called in to defend the Capitol, the State Department would be issuing some formal protest about this sort of politicalization of the military. But guess what? That's what Team Biden did with those 20,000 National Guardsmen, Scott.
You know what the Texas governor said?
I don't know if Biden ordered that, since he has no power to do that yet. But I also heard that even under ordinary circumstances, when they're bringing in the National Guard in a highly charged political area, like, they do some vetting already. I have a feeling that the media is playing that up big time and making it seem like they're trying to make sure that the bad guys aren't in the military. I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think that it's Joe Biden saying, hey, you need to check these guys out. I think it's, the commanders in the military themselves who are saying, hey, let's make sure, since some of our law enforcement officers and perhaps soldiers were involved in the incident at the Capitol on January 6th, let's be careful that we don't have dissenters within the ranks who can cause trouble.
Now, the call on the right from everybody from our former boss, Roger Simon, to people on Twitter and Gab and everywhere else, is boycott the inauguration. Don't show up. Don't protest. Don't even watch it on TV. Drive the ratings down. Make this thing the biggest non-event ever.
I don't think you're allowed to show up, are you? Is there a live audience at all?
Well, there have been calls for protest in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, but these calls are coming out from apparently Antifa-type organizations trying to bring out the worst of the right side to try and recreate January 6th during Biden's inauguration. And that's why you've got all kinds of bloggers and political commentators saying, if you're Republican, if you're conservative, if you're MAGA, don't go to Washington. Do not go to Washington on January 20. So when you see a poster, we're going to have an armed protest. No. you are being conned by the worst elements of the left.
Did today's Moving Back to America show is called The Art of the Snub, and that's exactly the way I think it should be played. And let them own the optics of this thoroughly legitimate election requiring razor wire and vetted National Guardsmen in the streets and all the rest of it. You can make the case against Trump all you want to and how he handled it after the election, but the fact of the matter is that this has been going on for a long time, and it's been going on the part of Democrats, and whether or not things were done about it and should have been done about it. This is not the first time that people felt like, geez, they have no confidence in the outcome of the election. So the governor of Texas said, I sent 1,000 National Guardsmen to Washington, and if they're going to question their loyalty and insult them like this, I'm just not going to send them anymore. So this is what happens when you have this kind of overt determination to not only criminalize your political opponents, but to silence them, to shut them up, to tell them news stories that happened, didn't happen. This is what you get. And, and that's one that belongs in one place. We didn't make any attempts to shut down our opposition, political opposition. This is all a one-way street on this one. And if you're suddenly amazed, progressives, why people are so completely distrustful of the entire process, you might ask yourself why you banned Alfonso Rachel from YouTube, for example, just as an example off the top of my head. Why did you do that? Why? Why did you shut down this whole story about the laptop and all the rest of this stuff? This is the result. This is what you get when you basically tell people that they have criminal opinions, that they have no moral standing, and furthermore, that you're going to do everything you can to squash their ability to talk to each other. This is the country that you get. This is what you get. It's what you designed. It's what you want. And that's what you get. So this idea that Biden and Harris and all the rest of them are just completely innocent of all of this is ridiculous. Ridiculous. For example, Joe Biden could have come out and said, if he really wanted to be a uniter, Joe Biden could have simply said, no, we are not going to do another impeachment process. No, 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 no. He could have simply done that, could have made a statement about it, and he didn't. So this is what they wanted, and this is what they got. And you're not going to get out of this problem using the same methods that you got into the problem. And that's basically what I've been trying to do over at the other show for weeks
28
now.
Episodes, 29,
yeah.
I think. I think you're at 29 episodes now, something like that.
Wow.
Just at 26, actually.
26.
Close enough.
I missed.
Yes.
Oh, I know why I think there's more, because of the Week in Review episodes.
Oh, well, that's exactly right, yes. And we did do an episode 0, so there's technically 27.
That's right. We did. It's proper computer coding. The counting starts at 0.
It wasn't much of a show. I just knew I had to do something. I didn't have any idea what the format was going to look like. I was just winging it.
But and by the way, more people than ever. Not only are a lot of people coming over and becoming members of BillWhittle.com, but more people than ever are listening to the podcast. With that, it's gone up probably. I want to say 5,000 or 10,000 a week. Over the last couple of weeks since you started doing the Moving Back to America stuff. And I think part of it is that format is more explicitly a podcast format. It just, we
started editing them 7-8 episodes ago, tightening them up to make them less like a radio show and more to the point, and getting better at those every day. So, and the regularity is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And we're on offense now. Country's on defense, but we're on offense. So.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
So, Steve, I'm actually kind of hoping that you're suffering from irregularity when it comes to your members only episode.
No. I took my gentle morning laxative, and now I've got a lightning round for you.
Gentle morning. By the way, probably the funniest line in a long time from our episode about the.
That's just been stuck in my head all week.
Which line?
What you said in the General Motors logo episode that we did of Right Angle.
When you said it was a gentle morning herbal laxative.
Oh.
That made me laugh. It still makes me laugh. Good. What are you going to do?
Okay, so because this is like one of these game shows, you want to see what I wrote down before I even asked you what your topic is?
Does it say lightning round?
It indeed says lightning round. Okay, so that's that. Bill Whittle, one remains. One man left standing. What would you like to talk about in your episode of Right Angle this week?
I almost Bigfooted this thing and decided to go first because I wanted this topic more than anything. I know certainly made me feel a lot better these days. You'll frequently hear advertising companies say, well, we're going to do this. We're going to change your packaging, and then we're going to produce a viral video that will go ahead and do this and so on and so forth. No, they've been saying this since there have been videos. 10 years at least, people say, well, then we'll make a viral video. Well, nobody knows what the lightning in the bottle is going to be ever.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, in the space of all of this frustration and anger and despair and all the rest of it, I have been enormously cheered by the presence of a 200-year song that has basically taken the world by storm.
The shanty.
Yes.
The Wellerman shanty.
The Wellerman shanty.
That's
the Wellerman
awesome.
sea shanty. Have you heard it, Steve?
I have no idea what this is.
It's
so
on
there's
TikTok,
a sea shanty.
Primarily.
Sea shanty there's a sea shanty from back, I want to say in the whaling days, somewhere around 1840, I guess. And it's one of many songs that sailors sang to coordinate their actions and their efforts, called The Wellerman. One guy on TikTok sang it by himself. He just sang it a cappella by himself. Then another guy said, well, God, this needs a bass line. So he added a bass line. Then somebody took the original song plus the bass line. Then they added a baritone. Then somebody took those three and then they added a second baritone and then a bass. And it ended up being like 12 layers deep. Then this woman came in and played the fiddle to it, which added an awful lot. Then women started putting in the high end. Then a guy added electronic drums and bass and stuff. And it just got the entire planet taken by storm.
I'm going to watch this thing as soon as we're done.
By the way,
because I'm on TikTok and I've seen this video a lot of times. I had no idea that the four guys that I saw in the video were not a group. That
you saw them together, standing together?
Well, no. They were all in individual pictures. You know, on TikTok you do this.
They had nothing to do with each other. Nothing, and that's what I like the most about it. No, somebody saw the original TikTok and said, well, I think I'll just do a voiceover to that and I'll add a little bass line. And he did. And then somebody said, wow, that's even better. And then they just kept adding and adding and adding. And this is the thing that is going to change the future of politics and economics in the country. And this is why these bastards are not going to win, because these things assemble themselves and they're very agile. They're unpredictable. They're unstructured. They're just magic. And I really, really like the idea. And there's one of the videos has these two black guys in the car driving. These are just modern African Americans. And one guy's super into it and the other guy is, what are you doing? And by the time he gets to the third chorus, the second guy is belting it out at the top of his lungs. And so the entire world is singing a sea shanty from the whaling days. And I find that so incredibly hopeful. And by the way, it is the ultimate earworm. You heard it once, you never stop singing it.
Yes.
It's just
beautiful. How have I missed this?
It's just beautiful. So I'll actually find a link for you, Steve. I'll send it to you real quick. I'll send you so you don't have to fish through it, so you can find the ones that we're talking about.
I don't know what it is about. It almost took TikTok to make this happen because of the duet feature on TikTok that allows you to take somebody else's video and put yourself in the picture next to them, basically, and join in whatever they're doing. And then you can kind of layer that, which is what happened apparently with this Wellerman thing, where they had, okay, now I'm going to duet those two guys, and then I'm going to duet those four guys or whatever. TikTok in some way that I can't understand. I don't engage in social media. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. I gave those up a while back, a couple of years ago, I guess. I remember when Vine came out and I checked it out and I was like, this sucks. I wasn't interested at all.
Wasn't that the one with the 6-second videos?
Yes, but
or whatever
apparently
it was?
TikTok is kind of like a grandchild of that. And TikTok's videos are primarily 15 seconds or 60 seconds or somewhere in between. But there's something about TikTok that is engaging in a way that no other social media has ever done. And you kind of know how the algorithm is being established. So if something starts that you're not interested in, you scroll off it quickly and you get less of that. And if you hang out on something for a while, then TikTok says, oh, you must want that. And so they'll give you more of it. But you can kind of scroll past it later if you get bored of it. But there is something that's just fascinating about all of these individual people who bring a wide variety of skills, singing and voiceover work and comedians and artists and people dancing and obviously a lot of cute pet stuff. In fact, the long-running series, I don't know what the name of the account is that does this, but there's this guy that just takes these things where people and animals and other things are falling down or tripping or, doing weird things, and then has this little duet background that just makes this weird little wee sound when they do it. And I'm hooked on it. I cannot stop watching these little wee videos.
Turns out that there's another song which also comes from the same period. I'm virtually positive. I think it's a much more quiet kind of a song, but I think it's a shanty, called Lever Johnny, and it's got over 1,000 people, independent of each other, have collaborated on the harmony of that. There's 1,000 people, including people that do it in sign language. That you see the whole. They'll zoom in on parts of the screen. There's one guy who starts, because it's the nature of a shanty is there's a guy who does the call, and then the chorus does the response, and they keep going back to the guy who started it, and then 5 people respond, then 200, then 700, then 1,000, and it's all in perfect harmony. It's all in perfect sync.
It's amazing.
And it gave me a great deal of hope, because, for deeper reasons, primarily with these 2 Black Americans in this car belting this thing out at the top of their lungs. It's like, this is a textbook example of cultural appropriation, and this is why cultural appropriation is something to be encouraged. It's something that's awesome. Fun. It's something that's different. It's a wailing song from the 1840s that is an absolute full-on blast to sing, and it doesn't belong to white people, and it doesn't belong to whalers, and it doesn't belong to Europeans. It belongs to the human race. And that's the point that I want to bring out on this thing, is it's just joyful and fun, and to lock people out of that because of their skin color, which is exactly precisely what the left is doing on everything, is evil. And I'm going to play it that way.
Maybe it's just because of what I pay attention to on TikTok, but I've also feel that there's a lot more positive stuff. It's funny because every once in a while you'll see an African-American woman staring really seriously at the camera and saying something like, I've got something that I need to say to white women. And she kind of stares intently for a little bit. And then she's like, I love you. Let's be friends. And you just move on.
There's a lot of that out there.
And there's a bunch of that. A lot of really kind of bringing people together, and people saying, hey, why don't we connect and form an alliance? Like if you're a potter who makes, jars or whatever, let's get together and form an alliance to help each other advance this. And there's just a lot of kind of unifying, positive, and hilarious stuff there.
Nice.
So all of these political divisions are all of these so-called racial wars and cultural wars and all the rest of it is a small group of very loud people that are encouraged by the philosophy of cultural Marxism, this whole Frankfurt School idea of dividing everything up into tribes and turning all the dispossessed tribes against the middle. And people don't want it, and people are not naturally that way. People naturally want to sing songs together, and if it's fun, they want to do that. And this is just evidence of that, and evidence of just the systematic poison that's in the political system and the media system and all the rest. People are much, much better people than they are portrayed to be by what our cultural betters are telling us.
But if people can run their own lives, what the hell do you need progressives for?
Precisely correct.
Well, and to take the counter of that, I think it's real evidence of the beauty and the goodness, and left to themselves, Americans would just as soon dance.
Just as soon dance and sing together, yeah, and that's exactly right. This is evidence of that. It's evidence. It's evidence of a couple things that I think are important. Anyway, and it's just plain fun. I just want to hear it again. So once you hear it, you'll never stop. It's just the worst earworm of all time. It's that catchy. So I'll send it to you, Steve. And for those of you who are watching the Backstage show, you might want to put some wax in your ears for this one, because once you hear it, you're just gonna want to keep hearing it. And I've done nothing but listen to mid 1800s sea shanties for the last 3 days. Every single one of them.
As one does.
I think, Bill, that you should give serious thought to adding your voice to the choir there.
Well,
oh dear God! If I added my voice, it'd break the internet.
You should duet that.
I'll take that whale in tow.
That's right. There's some immensely talented people. I was thinking about this at my other job. The people I work with are mostly salespeople. And little by little, as I've gotten to know my colleagues, and the department I work in has like 60 or 80 salespeople. Okay, that's just one part of this massive store. And little by little, I started finding out things like, Sean has a master's degree in something, and Tavares used to play football at the collegiate level, and Marcos is an incredible artist. I actually I saw him looking at this picture, and I was like, wow, that's a really good picture. And he's like, yeah. And then I noticed it had his signature on it. I'm like, you drew that picture? And one after another, I'm starting, Sandy has a ranch that she runs. She's a single woman that runs a ranch, and she drives a long way to come to work as her other job. And all of these people who are engaged in these fascinating enterprises, and people all around us are much deeper than we know and much more talented than we know. And I think TikTok provides kind of an outlet for that, for people to say, look,
that's right.
Hey, sometimes you'll see people on TikTok going, I really don't, I'm kind of isolated here and I don't really have anybody else I can talk to, but I just want to let you know, I got the job. It's like, yeah. I just wanted to tell somebody, and that's just the coolest thing.
Yeah, and TikTok also serves a valuable function of thinning the herd, because there's an awful lot of people out there trying to skateboard down escalators and things like that for the big TikTok audience grab.
But it's not like a jackass show. I mean, it's like they're good at it for the most part.
Well, they're jackasses, but there's a Reddit group that I love called "What Could Go Wrong," and it's just nothing but people doing really dumb stuff.
Oh, I need to get on that Reddit. I'm on my favorite Reddit. It's really the only one I go to almost on a daily basis. It's called Worship Porn. And not worship as in you worship God, but warships.
Yeah.
And it's nothing but high resolution photos of everything from wooden vessels from the 17 and 1800s to early ironclads, dreadnoughts, the I've got the Missouri, not the Iowa class battleships, all the way to modern stuff. And the photography on display, some of it is, a lot of it's public domain stuff from the war. Some of it is really modern stuff, either taken by Navy guys or by Navy enthusiasts and all that stuff. And it's a great Reddit, really great.
I guarantee you there's a TikTok for those guys too. And probably 3 dozen of them.
Gonna have to look for that. Oh, I'm out of water.
And to wrap this, one of my favorite recurring TikTok accounts shows video of people doing crazy things like being in a cherry picker, 3 stories up, and then standing on a ladder and on the cherry picker and reaching for the for something. And in the background, there's this guy singing, "Come with me and you'll be in a world of OSHA violations." Anyway, that's all. We've run this show to almost an hour now. And
wow.
It's a record.
2 weeks in a row.
I think we've got a lineup this week. Ladies and gentlemen, we're grateful to especially all you new members who've just joined us. Thank you so much and for your contribution financially, but also as you jump on board and start writing blog posts and making comments on videos. And now you can go, if you mouse over the members link once you're logged in, you will see that one of the options is now Member Forum. And you can go to the Member Forum and contribute there, come up with ideas that aren't necessarily just you reacting to things that other people have posted, but you initiating conversations. And I think you're going to find that that is going to be not only a fun process, but we'll learn a lot and we'll grow together. Bill, you look like you're trying to keep yourself from saying something. Or you'd be just blowing a kiss.
Country.
That's not his forte.
Okay. Well, we've gone forte and now 5-tay, so we better get going here. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.